My name is Rowan, and I am 34 years old. My father always said our family built things that last: stone, steel, and legacy. He was talking about Blackwood and Sons, the prestigious architecture firm my grandfather founded. But the only thing they truly built to last was the pedestal from my younger brother, Caleb. He was the golden son, the designated heir, while I, a landscape designer, was just part of the scenery. So when my father's health failed and the firm began to crumble, the family turned to me with an impossible request: come home, save our legacy, and do it all while working under the command of my utterly unqualified brother. They thought they were offering me a chance to finally be useful. They had no idea that for the past 5 years, I had been the silent, anonymous force behind their most successful rival, and that I was the only one who could decide if the Blackwood name was saved or buried forever. If you're watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you are viewing from. Before I tell you about the decision that remade my entire world, hit like and subscribe to hear more true stories about family expectations and the quiet power of building your own path. Before my life became a battleground, it was a garden. I owned a small but respected landscape design business. My days were spent with my hands in the soil, sketching out plans for rooftop gardens and quiet green urban oases. My tiny bungalow, filled with more plants than furniture, was my haven. I had a partner, a kind musician named Finn, who understood my need for both creativity and quiet. My life was small, intentional, and most importantly, it was mine. It was everything the world of my family was not. My family lived in a world of sharp angles and cold marble. My father, Jeffrey, had inherited the firm from his father and ran it with an iron fist and a rigid adherence to tradition. My mother, Margot, was the perfect corporate wife, her social grace a crucial tool in securing clients. And then there was Caleb, my brother. At 30, he was a charming, handsome musician with a trail of broken hearts and failed bands behind him. He had no interest in architecture, no head for business, and no concept of responsibility. And yet, he was the son in Blackwood and Sons. The favoritism was the foundation upon which our family was built. When Caleb wanted a vintage guitar, my father cashed in bonds. When I needed funding for my first business venture, a community garden project, my father called it a dirt-stained hobby and refused. "Architecture is forever, Rowan," he'd told me. "Your flowers die every winter." Their approval was a currency I was never issued. I was the responsible one, the quiet achiever who got good grades and never asked for much. I put myself through design school with scholarships and part-time jobs. After graduation, I worked for my father's firm for 2 years. It was a suffocating experience. My ideas were either dismissed or, worse, stolen. I designed an award-winning courtyard for a corporate client, only to see Caleb, who had done nothing but choose the color of the decorative stones, accept the award alongside my father. That was my breaking point. I quit, moved across the country, and started my own life, content to be the forgotten daughter. I never told them about my biggest success. 5 years ago, I was headhunted by Elias Vance, a legendary but reclusive architect who was starting a new boutique firm. He wanted a designer who understood the space between the buildings. We made an unusual arrangement. I would be his silent partner, the lead designer on all landscape and integration projects, working remotely under the pseudonym Arya. He would be the public face. The arrangement suited us both perfectly. Vance Designs became a quiet powerhouse, winning prestigious awards for our holistic approach. My family had no idea. They thought I was still just a small-time gardener. The call that pulled me back into their orbit was from my mother. "It's your father," she said, her voice strained. "He had a heart attack. A mild one, thank God, but the doctors are clear. He has to step back from the firm immediately." Relief that he was okay was quickly followed by dread. "And, Rowan, the firm is in trouble. Bad trouble. Your father, he made some bad investments. We're on the verge of losing everything. We need you to come home." The request was heavy with unspoken meaning. I knew it wasn't just about emotional support. "What do you need me to do, Mom?" Her next words confirmed my worst fears. Caleb is going to take over as acting CEO. It's what your father wants. The name must continue. But he needs guidance. He needs you, Rowan. He needs your expertise. We need you to come work for him, to help him save the family legacy. The proposition was so outrageous, so deeply rooted in our family's twisted logic that I was momentarily speechless. Come work for Caleb, my brother, who thought a blueprint was a blueprint and whose only project management experience was organizing his band's gig schedule. They weren't asking for my help. They were asking for my ghost-written success. They wanted my brain, my talent, my labor, all packaged neatly under Caleb's name to preserve the patriarchal fantasy of Blackwood and Sons. Mom, that's not a realistic solution, I said, choosing my words carefully. Caleb doesn't have the experience to run the firm. You need a professional manager or you need to consider selling. Sell? Her voice was laced with horror, as if I had suggested burning down the family home. Never. This firm is your grandfather's legacy, your father's life's work. It has to stay in the family, with Caleb at the helm. Rowan, this is not a time for your creative rebellions. This is a time for duty. Your father's health depends on it. The emotional blackmail was as subtle as a sledgehammer. The implication was clear. If I refused and my father's health worsened from the stress, it would be my fault. I agreed to fly out, not because I intended to accept their offer, but because I needed to see my father and assess the situation for myself. I told Elias I needed a week off for a family emergency, and he, with his usual quiet understanding, simply nodded. Take all the time you need, Arya. Let me know if you need anything. His trust in me stood in sharp contrast to my family's transactional demands. The atmosphere at my parents' house was a suffocating blend of fear and false bravado. My father was propped up in a recliner in the living room, looking paler and more fragile than I had ever seen him. But his eyes were still hard, his pride fully intact. Caleb was there, pacing the room with a restless energy, playing the part of the concerned son while checking his phone every 30 seconds. Rowan, my father said, his voice weaker than usual but still commanding. Good of you to come. Your mother told you the plan? I heard the proposal, Dad, I replied, choosing to sit in a chair opposite him, creating a space between us. It's not a proposal, it's a necessity, he insisted. Caleb will be the face, the leader. You'll be behind the scenes, handling the design side, the client relations. You're good at that stuff. He said it as if he were complimenting a secretary. The first major confrontation happened that evening. I had spent the afternoon reviewing the firm's financials, which my mother had reluctantly given me. They were worse than I imagined. The company was drowning in debt, bleeding clients, and was months behind on several major projects. It was a sinking ship. The firm isn't just in trouble, I announced at the dinner table that night. It's on the verge of insolvency. You have maybe 3 months before you have to declare bankruptcy. Jeffrey's face tightened. That's where you and Caleb come in. A new generation, fresh energy. Dad, energy doesn't pay off $500,000 in supplier debt. We need a real plan. I laid out my suggestions logically. We could downsize, sell off some assets, and bring in an experienced non-family CEO to right the ship. Or we could look for a buyer, an acquisition by a larger, more stable firm that could salvage the brand and protect the employees. I already told your mother we are not selling, he snapped, and I will not have some stranger running my father's company. It will be Caleb, with your support. I turned to my brother, who had been silent, staring at his phone. Caleb, do you even want this? Do you know what this job entails? He looked up, a flicker of something, panic, resentment, in his eyes before his usual charming mask slipped back into place. Of course I do. I'm ready to step up. It's time I took my place in the family business. It's what Grandpa would have wanted. The invocation of our grandfather, the man who had actually valued my artistic talent, was a low blow. Grandpa would have wanted his firm to survive, not to be run into the ground as a vanity project for someone who doesn't know the first thing about architecture. That is enough, my father roared, slamming his hand on the table. You have always been jealous of your brother. You come back here after years of abandoning this family, and you dare to question our decisions? You will do your duty, Rowan. You will support your brother, or you are no longer welcome in this house. The ultimatum hung in the air, thick and poisonous. It was the same threat, in different forms, they had used my whole life. Conform or be cast out. In the past, the fear of their disapproval would have been enough to make me back down. But something had shifted in me. Maybe it was the years of building my own life, or the quiet confidence that came from my secret success. Then I guess I'm not welcome, I said, my voice shaking but firm. I stood up from the table. I will find a hotel. My mother gasped. Rowan, don't be so dramatic. Your father is ill. You can't just walk out. He is the one who gave me the ultimatum, I replied, looking directly at my father. I came here to help, but I will not be a party to this delusion. You are driving the company off a cliff, and you're trying to hand the wheel to the person least qualified to steer. I won't watch that happen. I left the room, packed my overnight bag, and walked out the front door, the sound of my mother's frantic pleading following me into the night. I checked into a generic hotel near the airport, my heart a painful knot in my chest. I had stood up to them, but the victory felt hollow. The next morning, I drove by the old Blackwood & Sons office building. It was a beautiful structure my grandfather had designed, a testament to a time when the name meant quality and innovation. Seeing it now, knowing the chaos and debt churning within its walls, was heartbreaking. I loved that legacy, even if its keepers had never loved me back in the same way. It was then that I made a decision. I couldn't save them from themselves, but maybe, just maybe, I could save the company. I called Elias. I have a strange business proposition for you, I began. I laid out the entire situation. My family's failing firm, their desperation, the value of the Blackwood name and client list, and the absurdity of their succession plan. They're going to lose their biggest remaining client, a tech campus development called Northlight, within the next month if they can't present a viable new design, I explained. Their preliminary designs are a mess. I saw the files. There was a long silence on the line. Then Elias spoke, his voice calm and strategic. Vance Designs has been looking to expand our portfolio. The Blackwood name, despite its recent troubles, still carries weight. What are you proposing, Aria? I want us to bid for the Northlight contract, I said, my heart racing. I want you to let me lead the pitch, not as Aria, the anonymous designer, but as Rowan Blackwood. And after we win it, I want us to make a formal offer to acquire Blackwood & Sons. Elias was quiet for another moment. That's a bold move, a hostile takeover of your own family's company. It's a rescue mission, I corrected him. The only way to save my grandfather's legacy is to take it from the people who are destroying it. All right, he said finally. Draw up a proposal. Show me what you can do with the Northlight project. If it's as good as I think it will be, we'll move forward. Just be sure this is what you want. This will burn bridges. The bridges are already ashes, I replied. I'm just trying to build something new on the other side. For the next 2 weeks, I worked with a feverish intensity. I rented a small co-working space and threw myself into redesigning the Northlight campus project.
I had seen the original plans my father's firm had submitted. They were uninspired, dated, and completely ignored the client's desire for innovative, sustainable design. I started from scratch, integrating the landscape and the architecture, creating a campus that felt more like a park than an office complex, with green roofs and rainwater harvesting systems and buildings oriented for maximum natural light. It was the best work I had ever done. Meanwhile, the pressure campaign for my family continued, but it took a new, more insidious form. My mother began calling, not with anger, but with tearful updates on my father's health. "He's not sleeping, Rowan. The stress is taking a terrible toll. He keeps saying that you've abandoned him in his time of need. The doctor is worried about his blood pressure." Caleb sent me sanctimonious texts. "I'm doing my best here, but it's hard when my own sister is actively rooting for me to fail. I thought you were better than that." They were trying to frame my act of self-preservation as an act of aggression against my sick father. The guilt was immense, a physical weight that settled on my shoulders. There were moments I almost buckled, almost called them to say I would do whatever they wanted. But then I would look at the design I was creating, a plan that was so full of life and innovation, and I would remember what I was fighting for, my grandfather's true legacy, not my father's broken version of it.
The day I presented my Northlight proposal to Elias, I was a bundle of nerves. He reviewed the plans in silence, his expression unreadable for what felt like an eternity. He walked around the conference table, looking at the renderings from different angles. Finally, he stopped and looked at me. "This is brilliant," he said, his voice filled with genuine admiration. "This isn't just a redesign, it's a complete reimagining. It's exactly what the client has been asking for. We're going to win this contract, Rowan." His confidence was infectious. The first stage of my plan was in motion. Elias, through his official channels, submitted the Vance Designs proposal for the Northlight project. As we waited for the client's decision, my family made their next move. They must have sensed they were losing control because they escalated their tactics from emotional blackmail to a public power play. Without warning, they issued a press release which was picked up by the local business journal. Caleb Blackwood named new CEO of Blackwood & Sons, poised to lead a historic firm into a new era. The article was filled with glowing quotes from my father about Caleb's fresh vision and innate leadership qualities. It mentioned me only once, in passing. His sister, landscape designer Rowan Blackwood, is also expected to return to the firm in a supportive role. A supportive role. I was a footnote in the story of my own family's future, a decorative accessory to my brother's coronation. The humiliation was a public spectacle. Friends and old colleagues started calling, their voices a mixture of confusion and pity. "I saw the article. I had no idea you were moving back to work for your brother. Is everything okay?" Each call was a fresh stab of mortification. My mother called that afternoon, her voice bright with triumphant cheer. "Did you see the article, darling? Isn't it wonderful? The response has been so positive. Everyone is rooting for Caleb. Your father feels so much more relaxed now that the transition is official. It's really taken a weight off his shoulders." She was telling me, in her passive-aggressive way, that my father's health was now tied to this public narrative. If I challenged it, if I caused trouble, I would be the one putting him at risk. "Mom, you know Caleb isn't qualified for this. You've set him up to fail." "Not with you by his side," she chirped. "You'll be his secret weapon. He'll get the credit, of course, for appearance's sake, but we'll all know you're the one making it happen. It's the perfect arrangement." The perfect arrangement. I would do all the work and he would take all the glory.
It was my entire childhood crystallized into a corporate structure. "I will not be his secret weapon, Mom," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "I will not work for him." Her chipper tone vanished. "Rowan, do not do this. Do not embarrass your brother, and do not upset your father. We are a family, and you will do your part." She hung up before I could reply. 2 days later, the call came from the Northlight Corporation. They had reviewed all the proposals, they had dropped 2 of the contender firms, and had narrowed it down to the final 2, Blackwood & Sons and Vance Designs. They wanted to schedule a final presentation with each firm's leadership team the following week. It was happening. The showdown was set. Elias called me immediately. "It's time, Arya. Are you ready?" "I'm ready," I said, a strange sense of calm settling over me. I spent the next few days preparing with Elias, honing our presentation. We would present our vision for the campus, and at the end, he would introduce me, Rowan Blackwood, as the lead designer and his silent partner. We knew it was a risky move, but it was the only way to expose the truth. The night before the presentation, my father called me. It was the first time he had called me directly since I had left their house. His voice was tired. "Rowan, I'm asking you, as your father, to be at the presentation tomorrow, in the audience, as a sign of family solidarity. It would mean a lot to Caleb. It would mean a lot to me." He was calling in the final marker, the daughter duty card. "I'll be there, Dad," I said, the double meaning hanging in my words. "Good," he said, a note of relief in his voice. "Just be supportive. For my sake." "I'll be exactly what I need to be," I replied, and before he could question my strange phrasing, I ended the call. The stage was set, the players were all in position. Tomorrow, the show would begin. The Northlight corporate headquarters was a testament to the kind of architecture my family's firm used to create, timeless, elegant, and commanding. The final presentations were held in a vast boardroom on the top floor with a panoramic view of the city. I arrived with Elias an hour early, meeting with the Northlight CEO, a formidable woman named Miss Sterling, in her private office first. "Mr. Vance, I was intrigued by your proposal," she said, her eyes sharp and intelligent. "It's the only one that truly captured our vision, but I understand you have a unique staffing situation you wanted to discuss in private." "Indeed," Elias said, with a calm smile. "Our lead designer on this project, the architect of the vision you admire, has a personal connection to this process. I'd like to introduce you to my silent partner, Arya." He gestured to me. I stepped forward and shook her hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Miss Sterling. My real name is Rowan Blackwood." Her eyebrows shot up in surprise, but she was a consummate professional. She listened without interruption as I explained the situation, my history with my family's firm, my secret work with Elias, and my reasons for revealing myself now. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Well, Miss Blackwood, this is certainly the most interesting pitch I've had in years. Your design is brilliant. Your situation is, complicated. Let's see how this plays out. I, for one, am very much looking forward to the show." My family arrived shortly before their scheduled presentation time. They walked into the boardroom with an air of beleaguered importance. My father looked frail but determined. My mother was a bundle of nervous energy. And Caleb looked like a terrified child playing dress-up in his father's suit. They saw me sitting in the back row of the observer section, and my father gave me a tight, approving nod. He thought I was there to be his compliant, supportive daughter. Their presentation was a disaster. It was clear that Caleb was just reading from a script he barely understood, stumbling over technical terms and unable to answer any of Miss Sterling's sharp, insightful questions. My father tried to jump in and save him, but his energy was low and his ideas felt dated and out of touch. I could feel the contract slipping through their fingers with every painful, awkward minute. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash. I felt a pang of pity, not for my father or brother, but for the employees and the legacy they were letting down. Finally, Miss Sterling put them out of their misery. "Thank you, gentlemen. We have a lot to consider," she said, her tone polite but final. As they were packing up their briefcases, she added, "We will be hearing one final presentation now from Vance Designs. You are welcome to stay and observe." My father, ever proud, agreed. He probably thought watching his competitor would give him some insight. He led my mother and Caleb to the seats directly in front of me. Elias began our presentation. He was a master, captivating and eloquent. He spoke of philosophy, of the connection between nature and productivity, of creating spaces that inspired innovation. Then he put my renderings up on the big screen. The room was silent, captivated by the images of a campus that was more than just buildings. It was an ecosystem. "The vision you see before you," Elias said, his voice resonating through the room, "is the work of a singular, brilliant talent. For years, she has preferred to work in anonymity, allowing the designs to speak for themselves. But for a project of this importance, it is time for her to step into the light. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce you to my partner and the lead designer of the Northlight project, Miss Rowan Blackwood." I stood up from the back of the room and walked to the front, my heels clicking softly on the marble floor. The look on my family's faces was a stunning portrait of disbelief. My mother's hand was over her mouth. Caleb looked like he had been struck by lightning. My father's face was a storm of conflicting emotions: shock, confusion, betrayal, and a flicker of something I had never seen before: respect. "Thank you, Elias," I said, my voice clear and steady as I took my place at the podium. "Miss Sterling, board members, the core principle of this design is integration." I spoke for 20 minutes, walking them through every detail of the plan. My passion for this project was evident in every word. I wasn't just presenting a design, I was claiming my identity. When I finished, the room was silent for a moment, and then Miss Sterling began to applaud, a slow, deliberate clap that was soon joined by the rest of her board. "Miss Blackwood," she said, her eyes shining, "that was, without a doubt, the most compelling architectural presentation I have ever seen. We have our decision. The Northlight contract is awarded to Vance Designs." She then turned her gaze to my father. "Jeffrey, it seems you had the solution to your company's problems under your own roof the entire time. What a pity you never thought to look there."
The aftermath of the meeting was a quiet explosion. My family didn't scream or shout. They simply packed their things in a stunned, humiliated silence and left the boardroom without a single word to me. The weight of their public failure and my public triumph was too immense for immediate confrontation. The next day, Elias and I made our formal offer to acquire the key assets of Blackwood & Sons: the name, the client list, and the extensive design archives. The offer was fair, even generous, considering the company's massive debt. It was their only viable option to avoid a messy bankruptcy that would have tarnished the family name forever. My father, humbled and left with no other choice, accepted the offer through his lawyer. The era of Blackwood & Sons was over. The era of Vance Blackwood Designs was just beginning. I expected my family to retreat and lick their wounds, but my mother surprised me. She showed up at my hotel room door 2 days later, alone. She looked older, the polished veneer stripped away, leaving a woman who seemed lost and fragile. "I don't understand," she whispered as I let her in. All these years, while we thought you were just gardening, you were doing this? You never asked, Mom, I said gently, pouring her a cup of tea. You never showed any real interest in my work, so I stopped talking about it. We talked for hours, for the first time in my life, without pretense. She cried, admitting her own complicity in my father's favoritism, her own blindness. We were so focused on propping up Caleb, on forcing him into a role he was never meant for, she confessed. We never stopped to see that the real heir to your grandfather's talent was you. We failed you, Rowan. I failed you. It wasn't an excuse. It was a confession. And it was the beginning of a long, difficult process of rebuilding something new from the rubble of our old relationship. My father was a harder case. He refused to speak with me for weeks. Finally, I went to his house, uninvited. I found him in his study, surrounded by the ghosts of his former success. I didn't do this to destroy you, I told him. I did this to save what grandfather built. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with a pain that was deeper than just wounded pride. He always saw it in you, he said, his voice raspy. My own father, he used to tell me, Jeffrey, that girl has the gift, don't you waste it. And I did. I was so determined to have my son follow in my footsteps, I was blind to the daughter who was already walking the path. It was the closest he would ever come to an apology, but it was enough. A year has passed. Vance Blackwood Designs is thriving. I serve as the co-CEO and creative director, and my name is finally where it belongs. My father, after much soul-searching, accepted a position as a senior consultant, sharing his decades of industry wisdom, but without the pressure of leadership. He's a better architect than he ever was a CEO, and in this new role, he seems to have found a measure of peace. My mother has become our firm's biggest cheerleader, and a tentative, more honest friendship is blooming between us. And Caleb? He finally had to face a world that didn't revolve around him. He took a job at a local music store, and for the first time, he is supporting himself. He started taking classes in music production, finding his own path, free from the weight of our father's expectations. Our relationship is still strained, but there's a newfound respect there. He sees me now not as his overlooked sister, but as the woman who, in a strange way, set him free. My life with Finn is better than ever. We bought a small house with a large garden, a place where I can create and he can compose. Our quiet passions finally in harmony. I didn't set out to take over my family's company. I just wanted to build a life of my own. But in the end, I learned that sometimes the only way to save your family's legacy is to have the courage to dismantle it and rebuild it in your own image, stronger, truer, and finally whole. Have you ever felt like your talents were overlooked by your own family? How did you find the courage to prove your worth on your own terms? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to our channel for more real-life experiences. And if you know someone who feels invisible, please share this video with them as a reminder that their time to shine will come. Thank you for listening. And remember that the most beautiful things are often built on foundations we had to lay for ourselves.